before kids, BK, I call it, I was able to work 7 days a week and minimum 10 hours to 14 hours, 7 days a week. Now, granted, not every single week, because, once in a while there'd be a holiday or a family, Thanksgiving or whatever the event might be, but essentially work. That's all I did. And I could focus on that. And I could do quite a bit as an individual doing that.
Sure.
What I mean by growing up now is that I've had to grow up to start raising a family of my own. And I've had to take time away from the time I was putting in before. What I didn't have in skill or a great network, I was making up for in blood, sweat, and tears.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am so grateful that you joined me today, and wanted to thank you again for being a regular listener. I want to introduce our guest today because a fascinating person. Arron Renfrew is someone that we really should get to know a little bit, and I'm excited to do so with you together. So Arron, or Arron, do I say Arron or Arron?
It would be properly pronounced Arron unless you're reading it on paper, and then it'd be Arron, like you're saying. Yes.
Right. Well, actually, it's interesting because the name Arron in Hebrew is actually pronounced Aharon, which is
interesting.
Which a lot of people kind of slur as just Arron, because the hey in Hebrew is kind of slurred sometimes. So I actually have a son whose name is Arron or Aharon, and we call him, just Arron.
Okay.
But some people call him Arron, but it's all good. Anyway, so Arron is, someone straight out of the Pacific Northwest. Okay. He's come from a family of farmers and teachers. Yeah. So he's been a goat farmer, which is amazing because I actually joked about doing an episode about goat farming. And, he's gone to work in an auto shop, to a bartender, a black belt in Aikido. That's awesome. Playing with a band, with his mom, called Sonny and Sherry.
Don't see that every day.
Definitely do not see that every day. But, I'm just thinking right now, dun, 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 I got That's a great one. Did you guys put any albums?
No, we didn't. Do you have time for a little side story on that?
Absolutely, always.
All right. Side story on that. I was always in drama. I was a thespian. I was always kind of into performing. Growing up, my mom was always doing these pretty low size but high-end rock shows. When I was a kid, there used to be quite a scene in the bars, and they'd have light shows, and it was very high quality, very high energy shows. And so I just kind of got a bug for that. And in college, I was like, Mom, I want to play music. I'd like to learn how to play the guitar. So she started showing me a few things on the guitar. And then I just kind of kept bugging her that, I'd like to take this thing further. I'd like to get on stage again. It's been a while since I've been on stage. And so when I could barely play the guitar, my mom booked us a gig. And the layman's term for booking a gig is a live performance in front of people. I could play 2 songs. I had to learn 45 songs in 90 days.
That's awesome.
And talk about putting your feet to the fire and learning under pressure. I have never felt so sick to my stomach or like I was going to hurl everywhere as I did on my way to that first gig. And man, the audience was super supportive, but it wasn't the best first gig in the world. And I learned so much and picked up so much as far as performing and the importance of a good audience that day. But that kicked us into high gear, feet to the fire, so to speak. And then for a couple of years, we played local places here in the Pacific Northwest. And then the proverbial band broke up. My mom moved to follow her dream of raising horses and following a man. And I was kind of left in the lurch, and then kind of started moving on to the next phases of my careers.
Right. Awesome. Which led you at one point or another to real estate and
Absolutely.
brokering. And I think that's where we left off in the middle of the bio, that you had an initial goal of retiring by the age of 40.
Yep.
But that goal was reached by the age of 27.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then you just went on to more goals and new growing. And I think if anyone looks on his website, which we'll put in a note in the show notes over here, but you'll see that he's been awarded Seattle's top broker, I think for like every year consistently for like the past 10 years at least.
There's a couple of years where it was a close call, but the predominant number of the years, yes.
That's pretty amazing. So you're growing your portfolio both as an investor, as a broker, and let's just hear a little more about, what it's like to be a top broker in a metro. So are you brokering commercial deals, residential? What's your focus?
Yeah, our focus is residential. I would say that probably 90%, maybe 85, 90% of our business is residential. I love getting geeky about the numbers, and I don't get as excited about walking into a place and saying, here's the kitchen, here's the bathroom. It's got approximately 2,000 square feet, whatever that spiel is that people do on HGTV. So I really like getting into the numbers with people and really focusing on that. So I try to lean that into pushing my own values, which is to get people to look at real estate as an investment and try to plan their futures based on, getting a little bit of a portfolio together for themselves as well.
Awesome. And so I just want to go back for a second because obviously real estate has so many different facets to it. And being an investor yourself, owning commercial property and understanding that side of the industry, understanding what it means, like you're saying, looking at the financial future, looking at, planning, investment and finances. But I just want to take a step back because obviously you've been doing this for a long time. Okay. Doing this for, a couple decades or more. And you put out a goal that you want to be retired by 40, because I just skimmed over that in the bio when I introduced you. But you hit that, whatever goal that was for you at 27. Now, was that a financial goal, like this freedom number or whatever you want to call it is going to get me financial freedom, or was it something else?
My goal was to get my passively derived income to be larger than my living expenses. And when I was able to do that, I considered myself financially free. And basically, if I had so chosen to, I could have retired. Now, I originally made that goal when I was probably about 24 or 25 and thinking it would take me until I got to be 40. Well, as I got into it, I figured out how to do it faster, obviously. It took me about 2 years to be able to replace my living expenses with passive incomes instead of earned income. That was pretty exciting. But in order to do that and do it so quickly, I had to keep my living expenses extremely low.
Right.
And so the goal was super important to me. But once I reached it and I looked at my lifestyle, I thought, okay, well, I've met the goal. I'm super pumped. I'm super excited. I can live for free. I mean, it's not a magic wand. There's responsibilities and reality of managing a real estate portfolio. But essentially, my incoming passive income was greater than my outgoing expenses to live. So I was free. But I thought, you know what? This is fun, number one. And number two, I'm 27. Am I going to stop right now and just hang out and play video games or something? So not the path I wanted to be on. So from the time I was 27 and I reached that goal, then my next goal was, okay, increase the lifestyle a little bit because I may want to have a family one day. I didn't have a family. I was just a single guy at that point. So really easy to keep living expenses super low. And so may want a family one day, may want to help others. What I was passively earning, couldn't help others, couldn't have a family or raise a family on that. So part of the impetus was to continue to grow. Part of the impetus was to be able to have a bigger lifestyle.
Awesome. And so what were some of the things, obviously doing it at such a young age, right? Coming to those investor growth mindsets to be able to even come to those goals in the first place, realize that, I think there's probably a lot of people listening to this who are 24, 25, and maybe in your shoes and well, how do you create more passive income than your living expenses? And it may sound a lot more difficult than it actually is because it's just kind of out of the realm of how a lot of people think, and especially people who are in corporate America or get involved in a corporate or W-2 job. So what led you to that even realization that you can do that through real estate? Was there a mentor? Was there some sort of programs at that time? This is obviously going back a few years. You're not 25 anymore.
Right. Let me check my notes here. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with how I was raised. You mentioned in the intro, my dad was in education, my mom was in education, my grandma was in education, my grandpa was in education. Lots of that socialized or kind of that mentality of the school system. Go to work, go to school, get a good job, climb the corporate ladder.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt like that was kind of being drilled into me. But something else that was being drilled into me was my dad would always talk to me about his first duplex that he bought with my mom. And that was, I think, 1963 or 1965, somewhere in there. And he would tell me over and over. Well, let me back up, actually. So when I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, I remember our money in my family being really tight. And I remember my mom, we called them food stamps then. I think they call them like vouchers or something else,
right.
Less food stampy now. But I remember my mom being on the phone, because you did things on the phone back then, and applying for food stamps over the phone. And I remember them telling her, even at 5 or 6 years old, that you guys don't qualify for food stamps because on your tax returns made too much money last year. And I remember, the details of how that arrived at weren't as important as how much stress that caused the family. And going through that stress with my family, I think money became very important to me at that point. And then as the years were going on, as I was going through the traditional school system, my dad kept telling me the story about the first duplex. And he kept saying, Arron, we lived in one side, we rented out the other, and the rent that we got from there paid our mortgage and bought us groceries each week. And he just was so proud of that and kept talking about that so often that I think a part of that got imprinted in my brain of, wow, it's really smart to have something other than your heartbeats or your hours labored putting food in your mouth and a roof over your head.
Right.
So I think that repeated story and the pride that my dad had about that story really sunk in.
So you didn't really start out, obviously, from scratch, because you had a little bit of that, kind of ingrained in you from such a young age, that real estate and some sort of passive income was going to be able to help you get to that lifestyle that you wanted to live, which I think is a goal a lot of people have. Like, how awesome would that be if you had a rental property that was paying for itself and giving you money in your pocket to buy groceries each week or more?
Yeah. That was definitely huge. And I think that ingrained insecurity around money that I got at an early age. And my dad always had excuses of why he didn't really continue in real estate and didn't really grow into a real estate portfolio. And so I kind of had both. I had, here's the dream and here's why it can't be done. Well, it was done. You just didn't continue on with it. And to be able to continue that on and get to where I am today.
Let's jump fast forward to 2020 when we're recording this episode. So you own a number of commercial properties as well. So you've obviously grown your living expenses. Now you have a family, right? And you provide for it. And you've grown your portfolio to include many more income producing passive income. Now, I don't want to, the term of passive income sounds like I don't have to do anything, right?
Well, I do laugh, especially here in the Northwest. It's a very liberal hotbed of angst and controversy right now. And the media and our local politicians are trying to paint landlords as these evil, money-grubbing, selfish, lazy people that are trying to take advantage of tenants. When you say easy passive income, it ain't easy. Otherwise, everybody'd be doing it, right? So the key difference is, in my thinking, is that yes, it's a lot of work, a lot of responsibility, can be a lot of stress involved with it as well. You can have people wanting to sue you, you can have emergencies, you can have fires, you can have people dying. You're dealing with people and you're dealing with their most sacred, safe place that there is, their homes. So to say that it's easy is a joke. But the alternative for me, working a 9-to-5 job where I'm dialed into the same routine every single day, there's no upside, there's no creativity, there's no, at least, idea of control. For me, that just wasn't an option. I would rather have the risk and the stress and the responsibility of being responsible for thousands of people's homes and their lives than to be on a path that I don't have the responsibility, but I also don't have the freedom.
Excellent distinction that you make, because obviously it's not easy. It sounds like passive income is so easy. And, there are certain types of passive investments where, passively investing in maybe a syndication or something like that with someone else.
Sure.
But, that's not what you do, right?
I do a little bit of that. I do a little bit of commercial, do a little bit of residential, a couple single families here, a couple apartment buildings there. For me, it's all about the cash flow and what's being spit off from the investment. So
Sure.
I'm also looking at investing in some companies right now outside of real estate. I'm diversifying, if you will, because everything I've pretty much done has been real estate. But yeah, I'm trying to take the same principles that work in real estate and apply them outside of it as well.
Well, it sounds like you've diversified within real estate as well, which obviously can be done, right? You own like a shopping center, residential, things like that, multifamily apartment buildings. But you touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to ask you, like at this point, obviously we're going through this pandemic. There are things that are uncertain. I'm sure that you have been affected directly from this, sounds like, from your local. And it sounds like, from the introduction, we talked about that you hit your goals at 27 and you just kept making goals and making them and breaking them. And are there any goals that you've made at this point, when this all came about, something that you're working on now that is a new goal of yours?
Funny you ask that. I've got a milestone birthday that's coming up. I'll let you guess if it's 20 or 30. But I've got a milestone birthday coming up.
Can I use the addition symbol?
Oh, boo. And I think what I'm ready for now in my life, as far as my biggest goal, is to grow up. And what I mean by that is, especially before family, I've been married for about 8 years now. I've got a daughter that's going to be 6 soon. So basically 7 and 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to change my business. Before kids, BK, I call it. I was able to work 7 days a week and minimum 10 hours to 14 hours, 7 days a week. Now, granted, not every single week, because, once in a while there'd be a holiday or a family, Thanksgiving or whatever the event might be, but essentially work. That's all I did. And I could focus on that. And I could do quite a bit as an individual doing that.
Sure.
What I mean by growing up now is that I've had to grow up to start raising a family of my own. And I've had to take time away from the time I was putting in before. What I didn't have in skill or a great network, I was making up for in blood, sweat, and tears.
Right.
And so now that I'm approaching that milestone birthday, the goal for me now is to put on my big boy pants and to grow up and continue on the path that I really started to kind of tweak and go this direction about 3 years ago. Always been part of my plan, but I'm developing more of a team approach now.
Right.
Is this podcast an okay place where I can give you a bit of a plug?
Sure, of course.
I don't know.
You can always give
is.
me plugs. Yeah. Give Yona Weiss plugs any day, all day.
All right. Well, my plug for Yona Weiss is you've been part of my process for growing up. I don't know if all your listeners know what you do besides the podcast, but one of the things that I'm aware that you do, because I'm very grateful for, is
goat farming.
Not the goat farming, no. No, on a cost segregation for properties.
Oh, right, of course.
Now, I've been solicited over the years, tons of times, by people on the dialing for dollars, people saying, hey, we want a dollar cost average. We're going to charge you X amount of dollars. We're going to save you all kinds of money, blah, blah, blah. Sound like a scam to me. Didn't sound real. Mm-hmm. And because of that, because I was nose to the grindstone, I wasn't willing to sort of branch out and have my teams and people that I trust into my inner circle. And I tell you, the power of teams and growing up, trusting others and growing that team mentality, part of my growing up is the service that you provide in the cost segregation. Because of that, I did my first cost seg with you, I think, last year. And because of that, I was able to hire another employee.
Wow.
And which further leverages and grows. Sure. And I'm going to probably, I think we're closing on another shopping center this week. And I'll be giving you a call probably in another 2 or 3 weeks when things kind of settle down to do another cost seg. And the structuring of that will help me save enough on my outgoing that I can have another outgoing, not to the government, where there might be some services or returns at a very diluted fashion.
Right.
But the government encourages us through your services to then let me hold on to that capital so that I can go leverage more and provide more housing and provide more services for more people. Absolutely. So my biggest goal, kind of a circuitous route, you might have been looking for a one-word answer, but my biggest thing as I'm approaching this milestone birthday is to grow the beep up so that I'm operating as I've always wanted to operate, as a team player, giving myself maximum amount of freedom and giving others the chance to either follow my footsteps or giving others a chance to grow and have jobs and make a living as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, turning to community. Let's put it that. Turning the community and growing the community. That's the milestone birthday goal.
That's excellent. It's one of my, main focuses also in everything that I do is just helping grow communities. And for anyone who has no idea what Arron's talking about here with the cost segregation, you may just have found this podcast, who knows where, on iTunes, because we're like the #1 top podcast on iTunes right now. But if you do want to check us out, go to yonaweiss.com. You can find more about cost segregation and how you can totally lower your income tax to pay little to no income tax if you own commercial properties so that you can hire more workers and grow up like Arron.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Moving on up. Yeah.
Hey, before we get to the final 4, I just want to tell you about Streamlined Podcasts. Okay. I could not have a podcast if I didn't work with Streamlined Podcasts. As simple as that. These guys are my go-to. They do all the editing of these audio pieces that you guys are hearing. And I really couldn't do anything without it. I literally tried to start a podcast for about a year, and it was just daunting to me to spend time writing show notes, to do the audio recording, editing, taking out the ums, the ahs, the spaces, everything. These guys make it sound so crisp, so clear at such an affordable rate. And for my listeners and my listeners only, you're gonna be thrilled. If you're ever thinking of starting a podcast or you have a podcast, check them out at streamlinedpodcasts.com. Set up a time to speak with them and use promo code WEISS, WEISS, and you can get 20% off your first month if you do end up signing up with them. I guarantee you it's going to be worth your while. So we're going to jump right into the final 4.
All right.
The final 4 is, the first question I have for you today, Arron, is what was the worst job that you ever had?
Wow. Worst job that I ever had was probably digging ditches.
Digging ditches.
My first jobs were digging ditches. And I think I was 11 or 12 when I got my first ditch digging job. It wasn't exactly a job to write home about. I had a young body at 11 or 12 years old, but I remember getting very sore and very blistered hands. Yeah, it didn't last too long. I think only a few months was I digging ditches.
Our second question for you is, what book have you read that has given you a paradigm shift?
Wow. Can I do 2 books by the same author?
Sure.
And I hate to give this book as an example because I just think that so many people probably feel the same way I do, that it's not some insight for your listeners. But if they haven't read it, they need to. And that's Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Mm-hmm.
2 paradigm shifts that I had in there. The big one in the first book was that education, my dad had his doctorate, was very important, just like in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. And getting that shift of paradigm from the 9 to 5 and the grind and everything into, there's another side of the coin. There's the investing side was huge. I was on that path already, but that helped me clarify it and really just launch from there. Then the second one was the cash flow quadrant. Mm-hmm. And that's what's kind of helped me get back into the goal that I'm talking about now for my milestone birthday. And what I learned in there, the cash flow quadrant, you have Robert Kiyosaki's got the 4 quadrants, the employee, self-employed, business owner, and investor quadrants. And I was reading through there. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, so I'm the self-employed, right? Yeah, we typically work the most hours. Oh, after taxes, we make the least amount per hour. Okay. So I was kind of reading through those things. But there's one point in that book that really hit me the hardest. And again, you're the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, or the investor. I was operating 99% of my time in that self-employed as the broker. And I realized when I was reading through there that on average, the self-employed worker lives 6 years less than anybody in the rest of the different categories. And I was like, wow, I've got this badge of honor and I'm proud to say I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it myself. And anybody can, I can. Gosh, I read that book probably 20 years ago, Jonah. Mm-hmm. So the seed was planted then, and it's a process, right? This just doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's the biggest thing, if I could pass on to anybody listening, like you're talking about earlier, the 24, the 25-year-old, someone out there that's listening right now and thinking, hey, I'm going to flip my fingers and I'm going to go have that Lamborghini. Hopefully, over time, they'll realize that the Lamborghini is pretty hollow. Fun, but hollow. There's bigger, more goals that can be had. But for me, it's definitely not a turnkey process. It's about grinding it out, self-improvement every day, trying to learn a little bit every day, get ahead a little bit every day. And for me, getting out of that self-employed mentality of no one else can do it. I'm going to do everything. I'm better than everybody else because I'm a control freak. I'm a self-employed entrepreneur. So that was a huge paradigm shift, understanding that in the category I had chosen for my life's passion, right, I would probably get 6 years less on the planet on average than folks in the other 3 categories.
Wow. Robert Kiyosaki is definitely a theme on our show with our guests. And there's a reason for that. It's because it is so incredibly powerful and the messages resonate and plant seeds. And like you said, even if they don't take root today, they will over time, if you continue with those right mindset and just kind of make those changes. So I totally resonate with what you've said, and I appreciate your viewpoint on that. So we're going to get to the third question, which is, what skill or talent would you most like to learn? And I know you said before that there's so many, and it sounds like our discussion that there are so many, but if you could pick one.
Boy, it's kind of going along that same, I guess I'm really focused right now because it's, again, put on the big boy pants to grow up and to learn to delegate and read people and help people,
right,
and help them be the maximum that they can be for the folks that are part of my team, and also help others as well. It's just so rewarding in and of itself to learn those skills, those people skills, and then to leverage those people skills into, furthering my education and furthering my portfolio is just treating people. And I don't mean in a way like, trying to read people and take advantage of people. Understanding people, right. I'm kind of known locally for my sphere of influence for arguing quite a bit on social media. And people who don't know me take it as, oh man, that guy's kind of a Yahoo, or, he's kind of out there. But I really enjoy finding out what makes people tick. Just like I like looking at a real estate deal and finding out what makes the real estate deal work or not work. Mm-hmm. I really like dissecting deals, and I also like dissecting people. And the human animal, to me, is incredibly fascinating.
So understanding people is going to help. Yeah, it's going to help in a lot of ways. So that's a great skill to learn, and I wish you luck on that journey. So the final question I'm going to ask you today is, what does success mean to you?
Success means to me, wow. As I age, that certainly changes.
Sure.
And it evolves. I don't think I could ever say that today on the Yona Weiss podcast that I said what my goal was, and I'm 98 years old on my deathbed, and boom, I made it because of what I said that day. But I will say today that what success means to me is freedom. I am successful if I'm free to grow and be the best me I can be, based on education and my ability to not be tied to any one thing. I really, really, really appreciate my ability that I have now, and it's improving every day, every week, every year. I'm working towards freedom.
That's awesome.
Success to me is freedom. Freedom for if my family's got an illness, that I have the money to be able to do that. I have the money to shelter them. I have the money to feed them. Travel used to be on there a little bit. I'm not a traveler, but my wife is. Freedom to travel. But, we're kind of putting that on hold right now for obvious reasons during this time. But yeah, bottom line, success to me is I want to be the freest and most educated that I can possibly be.
Unbelievable. Awesome. I love that. It comes from your background, the education. And it's not just, being a teacher, but it's about, improving yourself, and your goals change and your mindset changes over time. So continue that process, and that will lead you to success. So I wish you much success with that, Arron. And where can our listeners find you if they choose to do so?
What's your demographic? Because I've got a Facebook way, I've got an Instagram way. Depending on the age group.
We'll put them all there.
I can send you a link to it later, but probably the easiest way to get a hold of me would be through Facebook, and that's just facebook.com/Arron Renfrew. But my name is spelled strangely, as we kind of talked about at the top of the podcast. And can I tell you the story about that? Do we have time for that?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, Arron.
Yona, I literally wake up in the middle of the night spelling my name, Arron. And my wife wakes up and says, Arron, you're doing it again. What are you doing? And I spell my name so many times a day that I literally, it's in my brain. I wake up spelling my name at night. And the reason why is because nobody spells it like I do.
Right.
But I asked my dad, why? Why on earth would you do that to me? And he says, well, because it was easier for you to spell. I'm like, easier? What do you mean? And he said, well, A-R-R-O-N. A-R-R-O-N just rolls off the tongue. I'm like, okay, A-R-R-O-N rolls off the tongue. What about A-A-R-O-N? Does that roll off the tongue any differently than A-A-R-O-N? or A-R-R-O-N? And he couldn't answer. He just kind of looked at me blankly. But the one nice thing, actually that's a nice segue, great way to contact me is arron.net. I was able to get my name as a website, one name, arron.net, because of my dad naming me some 30, 40 years ago, very oddly, right? But it made that URL or that domain name available. So there's arron.net, there's Arron Renfrew at Facebook, there's Twitter.com is Arron Renfrew, Instagram and Arron_Renfrew, RENFREW. So there's a number of ways that people can get in touch. And if people want to just pick my brain, I'm happy to chat with any of your listeners and get in more depth with what I'm thinking. If they want to poke fun at me or they have serious questions, I don't care. I love talking with people. So
awesome. Thanks so much, Arron. ARRON Renfrew. We will talk to you soon. Good luck with the closing next week, and wishing you much success. And remember, to our listeners, thanks again for joining. And remember that the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.